Hello, guys. Welcome to the channel. If you are new here, we're so happy to have you. Here we have at Tyro News Network, we have TNN reporter Owen Haley. Would you like to say hello?
Hello, people.
And then we also have a very special guest, RNC chairman, or chairwoman, actually, because he is a woman, Nancy Reagan. He does have a man voice because he did easily transition into a woman.
Christopher.
Would you like to say hello?
Hold on, Chris. You gotta. You're gonna have to restart that.
Oh no, that's the intro. That's the intro, honey.
No. You gotta cut that. You gotta cut that.
Anyway, on other news, let's start with our very first question of the day.
No. You gotta cut that out. You gotta cut that out. Come on.
How's that rigged?
Do not say I transitioned.
You kind of did, don't you think?
Can I fix myself? Okay.
Okay, let's start. Okay. So, after 7 removals of the RNC chairman and vice chairman, you yourself included have also been removed. How confident are you that you will stay on as the RNC chairman if, just say, the presidential nominee, Louis Amaya, doesn't win this November? What is your response?
How confident am I that I will stay as chair if Louis Amaya loses? I'm very confident.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add to that, or that's just your words?
Yeah, no, I got it. I think well, I've made some insider deals with candidates and things like that. But if Louis Amaya happens to lose this election, which it's looking very unlikely that happens, I believe that I will have plenty of support in getting re-election because I have 100% approval rating within the party. It just, seems about right. It would happen.
Okay, and you said that you made backhand deals. Are you saying that you did cocaine?
No, I wouldn't say that exactly. That's not even close to correct. I'm saying I've made deals with people, with other politicians if Louis Amaya were to win.
Okay, and so what deals are they? Are you including Jimmy Carter? Well, the one who just died and was mutually slaughtered by Christina Haley?
I will not mention names, but I will admit that I have been involved in some deals with other politicians for the betterment of the people.
Are you saying that Ronald Reagan, who had an extramarital affair with Christina Haley, that you don't think there's any sort of connection to your husband, to your former vice chair being killed?
Right. So yeah, my husband had an affair about that. He got put in the basement for a few days after that one. He was in trouble at home.
So minor stuff, minor punishment is what you're saying. You
Right,
just
a
should be
minor
able to
punishment.
handcuff him for you. You don't like to see him handcuffed?
No, he got put in the basement for a couple days. I fed him, nothing illegal, but he got put in the basement for a few days.
Right. Well, I'm sure he blamed his Alzheimer's on this.
Yeah, he blamed Christina Haley for everything.
Well, according to Inside Report, Christina Haley has told TNN News privately from an unknown source that Ronald Reagan was the first one to come on to her. Similarly, she compared herself to Marilyn Monroe to Jack Kennedy. Do you agree or disagree with this?
I am receiving new information. Okay. So he compared her to Marilyn Monroe and himself to John F. Kennedy.
Yes.
And then me to Jack Kennedy.
But she said, sir, you know Jack Kennedy.
John Kennedy.
Whatever. Similar. Close enough.
Yes, close enough.
Close enough. Anyway, moving on to the next question. Since the start of the server event, fellow Republicans have struggled to unify together. However, they seem to finally find their candidate, Louis Amaya, who they picked overwhelmingly for. 2022, Republicans had a great showing during President Oliva's first midterm. However, the 2026 midterm showed a different story, with Democrats gaining 283 seats in the House, sweeping all Senate seats 55 to 45, and winning more than 75% of all governor's races. What do you believe happened to the party during this time? Not to mention that President Oliva won re-election with 407 electoral votes back in 2024. What is your statement on this?
So the 2026 midterms, that happened when the party was in quite a disarray, when we had like not great leadership. And then, after a little while after that, everybody was split apart at the time. Like nobody could agree on anything. There was party infighting at all times. So then we had like however many oustings we had until eventually I made it to the chairman position with overwhelming force in a vote. And so far, it seems that I've been the only chairman to be able to unify the party and make everyone at least pretend they like each other. But it seems like everyone likes each other at this point, and they all agree on everything.
But you still said pretend. Who are you referring to? Because obviously you mean that there's some sort of fake alliances being made. Are you suggesting that some
Well,
Republicans might plan to sabotage one another if the opportunity
no,
presents
I
itself?
don't think that. I think there's people that just they don't quite care for each other per se, but they will at least pretend that they like each other in order to have party unity.
And do you think that there's a possibility of, just say you were to step down or you were to relinquish your role as head of RNC chairman or chairwoman, because you did transition, do you think that the party will fracture itself from the inside out and will end up facing an identity crisis similarly to before you became the head chairman?
I can't say for sure. I mean, I know who I would endorse if I stepped down or I, for some reason, was unable to run. I know who I would endorse. I will not say who, but I don't know if that person would be able to hold the party together like I have.
Right. And so we had multiple RNC chairmen. We had Skylar B. Bennett as the vice chair. We had Owen Haley, who was disqualified. You have the German guy who was also disqualified. You have Mike Shepard, who was also disqualified. You had Jimmy Carter, who was also disqualified and was a couple months later was assassinated by Christina Haley because Jimmy Carter was one step away from blocking her to Ronald Reagan, her lover, who happened to be your husband. So, speaking on that, when it comes to the disqualification, well, it seemed to me that the RNC chairman had a very low bar to meet in order to unify the party. Do you think that there need to be higher standards going forward for the next person to take on your role when you step down or find yourself relinquishing the role?
Well, elaborate on what you mean by higher standards.
Higher standards as in better quality, not a lot of baggage, more morale. They more so rather vote on results and policy rather than petty politics, which seemed to be the normality in the Republican Party when it came to electing an RNC chairman before you came in, and you kind of put a stop to that. It's been weeks now since the RNC has been ousted from power.
Yeah, we've been doing quite well on that. Clearly, myself and Vice Chair Gerald Ford are doing very well, as we both have a 100% approval rating within the party.
Right. However, General Ford, who was formerly playing as Jimmy Carter, has failed to do what you do. Do you think that might be a testament to his ability to lead, or you think that might just be that him as a character that he embodied so much that he was blinded by the idea of how to lead properly? Do you think now that he's been relieved of his duty and role as Jimmy Carter by Christina doing the assassination, do you think that actually ended up helping him in the long run?
I think that he just has a slight problem keeping his cool sometimes. People can antagonize, and he kind of just lets go from time to time. I think the death of Jimmy Carter and moving on to Gerald Ford helped quite a bit, I would say, yes.
Right. And I completely agree with that. Owen, go ahead.
Okay. Who do you believe will become the 2028 Democrat nominee? And do you believe Louis Amaya will be able to defeat them this November?
Okay, that is at this point a difficult question because currently Rainbow Dash is in the lead in the primary, but now that the Republicans already have their nominee, we as a party are voting for in open primaries for Leo Peridot because we as the polls have shown, he is easier to beat with Louis Amaya as the candidate.
Wait a minute, let me actually fact proof that because there was I'm gonna actually check the news poll to actually fact check. So actually, you actually won with Leo versus Lewis. It's a tie right now. In the three-way race
past polling,
yes, past,
in the
but
majority of
it's
polls against those two, every single poll other than the latest one, I believe, is with Louis Amaya in the lead.
Yes, but I'm saying the shifting is shifting because now Leo is actually getting popular in the general election. Yes, he's not beating the other person. It's a tie and not winning by 8 points, but still a win to the Democrats. Are you kind of questioning? Do you still think Lewis can win with Leo shifting that much as an unpopular candidate?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the shift is just less people voting in polls is what that shift is.
Let's actually check that. No, let's actually check that again to prove if you actually
I think that Louis Amaya has it if Leo Peridot is elected as the Democrat nominee.
Well, it looks like it's more challenging no matter what, with James Dell getting more percent with Leo, and that's mostly it. He calls a tie. That would be the tie. A tie of the vote. The tie of the vote. 12 people are both backing the Democrats and Republicans. It doesn't look like it's like easy pickings, like it's down 30 or 20. It looks like actually people support Leo more than Lewis. So do you actually think the Democrats do have a chance of actually beating Lewis, no matter who's the nominee?
It really, again, it does depend on the nominee. I can't say if it's just Democrat nominee versus Louis Amaya. I can't say.
Well, it seems to me that it's really going to come down to possible turnout and partisan voting. It feels like the country right now is very partisan on voting on party lines. However, the Democrats do seem to be disaffected more so with the top of the ticket or who may be the top of the ticket, whereas the Republicans seem to be more aligned. However, James Adele, who's not really campaigning much, is still polling a significant portion. He is comparable to the 2024 Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in real life. So technically, if he holds up that margin, he might be the one who will decide the presidency. How confident are you in Louis Amaya's ability to win the White House without losing electoral votes in certain states, whereas the Democrats might lose certain states where the Republicans might be able to pick it up, but other Democrats as well may be able to pick up states that you guys won last election. How confident in your ability for that to happen?
Okay, so that's a very packed question. Let me go with, I think that no matter what, if Louis Amaya is the nominee and Leo Parada is the nominee, I think that even though James Adele is polling significantly well, I think that Lewis can still pull off a win against Leo Parada because there's a lot of Republicans. Almost all of the Republicans believe that he is too radically left, and there's even Democrats that won't vote for him because of partially that reason.
Right. And so, do you think that? Go ahead, Owen.
Okay. Well, it looks like a lot of people are voting with him because he got 12 votes in the newest poll. Because I am actually going to focus with the newest poll than like the oldest poll, something like that. And plus, he's tying the election with a three-way race with Leo, as he has a disapproval. The latest disapproval has him down with the disapproval with 31, and Lewis and him is tied with James Adele getting almost 20%. It looking like even with a large disapproval, a lot of people would rather vote Leo, and it's a tied amount, the exact same numbers. Then Dash. Yes, Dash wins by a bigger margin, but it's still bad when you have a very disapproved candidate who's down and has a disapproval of 31. The latest disapproval that was taking place from July 5th to July 8th, the latest one, with 31, aka 62% of people disliking him, 31% people approve of him, and those 31% voting, even some of the disapproval is voting with him because they don't want Lewis. So I think it's really looking like that Lewis does actually worse with both the Democrats. Yes, one he loses by 8. The other one is tied, but it's still bad because Lewis was leading against Leo for a long time, but now they're shifting and people would rather have Leo. And the third party is starting to de-support like they all do because none of them actually has a strong fully support. Most of the people will just vote for the top two things for anyway. So are you really thinking that Lewis could actually do it even with a candidate that almost above 50% of people hate and don't approve of, but having a tight amount of votes and 12 people voting Leo and 12 people voting Lewis, do you still think Lewis can win?
My faith, support, and endorsement are all on Louis Amaya.
So you don't believe that about the what the people are saying, because it really looks like not a lot of people actually like a lot of candidates. One of all, every candidate is not very popular, but you have a candidate who's in 60 of disapprovals, and in the average is 36, right? Okay, and then in the past point, he got barely the same amount as Lewis. He never did. He never got tied with Lewis in the entire polling with Leo and Lewis, meaning he's actually gaining support than the one from July 4th and July 7th. So when the poll with the approval that ended, he actually is approving after the disapproval and approval weighting poll ended. So you do think it is possible, even with a tight amount and a big shift of voters voting to Leo, and even the guy who has a lot of those people who voting for him, who's voting disapproval, he doesn't even have, I think, 12 people voting to approve him. So he's even taking people from the disapproval waiting to vote for him. So that's kind of bad for Lewis' campaign. Do you not think that, or do you agree with that?
Once again, I have full faith in Louis Amaya as our nominee.
Owen, you gotta let him answer.
To be realistic.
Owen, you gotta let him answer.
My full faith and support are in Louis Amaya, and I believe he can win if the nominee is Leo Paradise. If the nominee is Rainbow Dash, it will be more difficult, but I think if we campaign in the right places and if we gain the support of enough people, we can do it.
And how confident are you in that ability, considering the fact that the incumbent president won 407 electoral votes back in 2024, when normally a president wins by such a large margin, normally the incumbent party wins another term?
Well, I think that there's a fair big deal with the immigration problem. I think that that's a big issue in the country at the moment.
And so, are you saying that you don't believe that the borders should be closed and that a wall should be built? Because that's exactly what the president has initiated. Are you saying that the Republicans don't support that and they should put open border?
Is all immigration is legal? Am I wrong?
No. There's a reason why there's immigration policy that was enacted by the president to make sure that there's a discerned separation of immigration. He opened up Ellis Island. He initiated that so that all legal immigration can only go through Ellis Island, where those who cross the border can be referred to as illegal, and they will have to be sent back to the country according to the executive order. However, they can come through Ellis Island to be verified. So he is handling the southern border right now. Are you saying, and he also closed it permanently, whereas other Democratic candidates are saying that they are proposing a temporary closure of the southern border. However, you seem to be against the fact that there's a slow amount of immigrants coming across the border ever since the president has closed it permanently and opened up Ellis Island. Are you saying that you believe that you're creating some sort of host, or are you saying that you support open border to somehow win on a narrative of immigration? Where's your stance here?
My stance on immigration is that I think Ellis Island is letting in too many immigrants, illegal or not, and the border.
How are they illegal if they're getting verified at the island? How does that work?
Legal or not, there are too many.
Okay, I guess you're gonna give us the politician answer. Okay, we're gonna move on with the next question. President Oliva is popular among your fellow Republicans. What is your opinion on the president and your fellow constituents? Can you say the same for the vice president? That's basically the summary.
Okay, so my opinion on current President Oliva is I very favorable toward him. He's done a good job, I believe, with this country in general. A lot of Republicans would agree with me on that. But as for the vice president, 90% of Republicans disapprove of him. I am one of those.
Hold on. Did you just say approve or did you just say disapprove? Because
disapprove. I think 90% of Republicans disapprove, and I am one of those.
Right. Why?
Well, he's a lot more radically left compared to the president. The president is very bipartisan, and I think centrist and center-left, if you may, but centrist. And I think the vice president is quite a lot more left-leaning than that.
So what is your opinion on the former Republican vice president that he ran on back in 2020, such as Clark Kent, the former vice president, former vice president Diego, and former vice president Donald Reagan?
Okay, so former Vice President Diego he kind of went a little off the rails, if I'm correct, but he's calmed down a lot since then, and his policies have become a lot less radical on the situation. Former Vice President Clark Kent, I don't know very well, but from what I've seen, he's pretty good. And former Vice President Donald Reagan, I know nothing about.
Right. And so thank you for that. Just a reminder to everybody, RNC chairwoman Nancy Reagan has come in very late to the server event, so that is why they don't understand or know some of these people. However, as chairman, are expected to know them later down the line after this interview. So, if
I
you
will
don't
have to
mind,
do research on these people.
yes, I highly recommend you do so. It will be very ideal because as chairwoman, your job is to really know your party inside and out and the past history and future history of the party because you are creating history as you know it. So it's very important that you do so. Um, Speaking on that, the Republican nominee for president, Donald Reagan, who ran in 2020 against incumbent President Oliva, had won the state of Pennsylvania by a whopping margin. So had Skylar B. Bennett, who also won it by I think of roughly about 80% of the popular vote. If Owen can double check me here, Skylar B. Bennett has won Pennsylvania, a battleground, this election. What does that mean for the Democratic Party? Do you think that the Democratic Party has narrowed the margin to make Pennsylvania a battleground state? Because last I checked, the past two presidential elections, Pennsylvania was a very well-known state that was lopsided in favor of Republicans. What do you think happened in the state of Pennsylvania for your party?
You know, and I'm not really sure. I just think that voter shift is a thing that happens, and the people just decided they wanted to change. I don't know.
So what is your party's platform in order to win back the White House? Because it's obvious and very clear that Texas and Florida will go back to the Republican Party. It is expected to do so. However, if in some hypothetical weird scenario in which the Democratic nominee or even James Adele is able to win those states and basically essentially lock you out of the state for another election, what does that mean to your leadership and to the party as a whole?
Well, if we were to lose Texas and Florida in this election, then there's something seriously wrong with the unity that I thought we had, and just the candidate probably messed up in order to lose those states. There's a serious problem if we manage to lose those states.
Right. And so, speaking on that, the current incumbent president, excuse me, had won those states respectively by 70% or more in terms of margin, whereas Pennsylvania has been won by the Republicans by 80% or more. Do you think that there is a clear voting shift trend that's going on throughout the country that we could see an entirely different map? Or do you think that incumbent president is just a once in a lifetime candidate that appeared out of nowhere basically and has finished out his two terms and is term limited basically, and we're going to see a map that's similar to 2020, 2012 with Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton in that election? Do you think we might see a scenario like that?
Right. Yeah, I think it's just the current president was very well liked and just came out of nowhere as a candidate for everyone, and that's why he's done so well in the election.
And what do you think that means for the Republican Party? Do you think that the Republicans need a candidate like that in order to win, or you think that you're able to get legislation passed by helping centrist candidates on the Democratic Party's ticket to help get Republican legislation passed? What is your strategy here if the Republicans are locked out of the White House, but a centrist is in power? What is your goal there?
So if we're locked out of the White House, what is my goal for
passing legislation for the Republican Party.
Right. So we have a very big Congress disadvantage at the moment. So I think in order to pass legislation for the Republican Party, we're going to have to moderate a fair bit, and I think we're going to have to make a lot of bipartisan bills that compromise for both sides.
Right. And though the president himself had compromised some of his abilities in order to meet across the aisle for the Republican support, despite the fact that he had supermajorities in the House of Representatives and a clear majority in the U.S. Senate.
Right.
So
Yeah.
technically, he doesn't need to if he doesn't want to, but yet he's still reaching across the aisle. What does that tell you about the president? Tell you about the state of the country under his leadership? Do you think that would be the same for the next president?
You know, I don't know. I think that the current president is very good with being bipartisan, and once again is a candidate and president for all. It really just depends who the next candidate is, if they will reach across the aisle, like you said, and advocate for the other party as well. It just depends. I don't.
What is your opinion on the assassination on former RNC Vice Chairman Jimmy Carter? Suspect Christina Haley has fled the nation and sought citizenship in Saudi Arabia.
Well, my opinion on the death of former Vice Chair Jimmy Carter is that it was a very sad day, and we will try and get, well, I don't know the term. We will have someone, if we can, go to the great country of Saudi Arabia and bring her back for trial, because she is the prime suspect for the murder of Jimmy Carter.
Right. And so speaking on being the prime suspect for Jimmy Carter, in order to bring her back, the United States needs an extradition treaty with Saudi Arabia, which is not something that exists currently. So the next administration will have to draft up an extradition treaty in order to bring back Christina. However, she is a citizen of Saudi Arabia. So it will be extremely difficult to bring back Christina Haley back to her former country because she is a citizen. So technically that would be a threat to the sovereignty of Saudi Arabia.
If
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so if Louis Amaya were elected president, I will have a conversation with him on the matter of getting such a treaty or agreement with the great country of Saudi Arabia, in an attempt to bring Christina Haley back to this country for trial on conspiracy of the murder of Vice Chairman Jimmy Carter.
Right, and so speaking on that matter there, with bringing Christina back with the Republican president in power, what is your plan to do if, just say, Louis Amaya doesn't win the presidency, or even better yet, a scenario where the Saudi Arabians retaliate? Because, as of right now, inside reports are saying that the Saudi Arabian princes are considering marrying Christina Haley, further complicating this matter.
That is very complicated. A Saudi Arabian prince is considering marrying her. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Ooh. What? So what could we do in that situation? I could personally set up a meeting with the Prince of Saudi Arabia and have a conversation about the situation.
Right. And so what is your plan in order to be able, they're obviously going to want something from you. So are you going to be giving up private intel about the United States national security in order to bring Christina back for a win for the Republican?
I would. What could I do? So I would, as it's already been publicized and it's in news all over the world that former Vice Chairman Jimmy Carter has been murdered, and the world knows the prime suspect and that we're looking for her, but sit down with the Prince of Saudi Arabia that we could get a compromise put together.
Moving on to the next question here. What is your response to high third-party support for candidate James Adele, who hovers around 18 to 22% of the popular vote consistently and is expected to gain 3 electoral votes? If no candidate reaches 270 electoral votes to win, what would you do if Louis Amaya was in second place or better yet in third place? And in some weird odd scenario, James Adele win a large portion of the electoral vote to put him in first or second place. What would you do in that scenario?
Well, if no candidate reaches an electoral college majority, it would have to go to a House vote, which we currently have a large disadvantage in, and that would most certainly give the presidency back to the Democrats. But on that note, with the high third-party support, it's just going back into the 80s with Ross Perot and him getting that very high portion of 18.9% of the popular vote. Like you said, James Adele sits at about that spot, and Ross Perot never took any electoral votes. He took second place in a couple of states, but unless he wins somewhere like Maine, I don't see him winning anything other than that. I don't see it being a problem.
The Somalia pirates have been attacking U.S. warships and cargo ships. The president has struck a deal with them. However, they were recently spotted off the coast of Greece, a NATO ally. What will your administration's response be if Greece was attacked and Article 5 of NATO was issued, pushing the United States into war? What is your response in this regard?
Okay, I would, since we are under Article 5 of NATO at that point, I would urge the president to take military action to defend our ally.
Okay, is that all you have to say?
It's a simple question, I believe, the answer to anyway.
Okay.
A simple one. Okay.
Yeah.
Why not that?
Okay, Vice President Leonard Kim has finished a meeting with extraterrestrials, and it went successfully. They are seeking American citizenship and refuge. In exchange, they give us climate change technology. You recently mentioned that you do not believe in that climate change exists. Why is that?
So, to answer the question of why I believe climate change is a hoax, is it became a thing known as global warming whenever Al Gore ran for president. And before that, it had never come up as anything. It came up or when Al Gore ran for president as global warming, and he used it as part of his platform to scare people into voting for him. And at this point, he said, if we don't do something about it, then at this point in time, half the world will be underwater, and we're very much not at that point. I think it's a waste of money, and all of a sudden, after it was global warming, the White House was snowed in with 12 feet of snow, and then it became climate change all of a sudden. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Nancy, you think climate change is not real, but I live in New York, and the entire state and a lot more is very heat, and it's getting more hotter than record breaking. In upstate and New York City, getting the most hottest than they ever did. They never used to be that hot. We never used to 90 or almost 100 degrees. Same with Pennsylvania and multiple states that are all supposed to be at least a little bit cold, even with upstate being at least in the 90s. I still think that's like signs of climate change. And even the Republican Shamrock, the vice president pick for Lewis does even say that climate change is real and pointed about New York City. And you, as the chill, is not believing Shamrock and thinks climate change is a hoax. Well, you should go to New York right at the moment, or New York City, and without anything to keep you cold, I want you to stay outside for at least 10 to 20 minutes. You would be begging to go back inside. So I think it's kind of crazy saying climate change doesn't exist.
Okay. My response to that very packed statement, I will say, is if you read a farmer's almanac, it is meant to happen. The earth will get warm for a couple of years, and then for a couple of years it'll be extra cold. My grandfather told me that it's been happening that way since he can remember. And it even says in the Bible that it is meant to happen. It happens. It's always happened.
Do you believe that there should be a separation of church and state, or you think that the Supreme Court should step in to remove such barriers to allow church and religion to take dominant front and center in American politics? Where do you stand on that?
I believe religion should be separated from government politics, because if that's the case, then the government is able to control religion. I don't think that should be a thing.
If that's the case, then why do you mention the Bible in the interview?
Because I believe in God and I believe in the Bible. I trust the Bible, but I believe separation of church and state is important.
So this is actually confusing. So you say religion shouldn't be about politics, and you're in a political interview and you're mentioning the Bible more than once now. It's kind of going looping around, and it looks like you kind of flip-flopping from saying you still think you
the Bible
believe.
Is part of my morals, not part of my government politics. I would not incorporate the Bible into government politics. I'm just saying with my personal opinion that it says the factual statement in the Bible that it has happened. It's meant to happen. It doesn't have anything to do with climate change being politics or the Bible being politics. It's just climate change, quote unquote, is meant to happen.
Well, we all know climate change is expected to happen no matter what.
It's been happening for the last forever since the Earth has been around.
Yes, and I agree about that.
It is. The government has turned it into a political situation to get money and funds that they're wasting on nothing. It will never go away, and it will never be solved. It is meant to happen as intended in the Bible. It has been happening since the creation of the planet.
Well, are you saying...
The government brought...
Hold on. So are you saying that in a scenario with the Ice Age occurred with the mammoths walking around, that after those Ice Age, the Earth got warmer? Are you saying that you don't believe that the Ice Age existed? Because based on your logic, the temperature really stays stable for millions of years based on that same logic, which means that there should never be the dinosaurs, there should never be the mammoth because they didn't have the right environment to live in. Are you saying that you believe that when it comes to climate change and climate in general, that's not the case, that the mammoth and the ice age didn't happen? Global warming occurred when the Earth is in a warming period, which we are entering into because we are moving away from an ice age. Are you saying that you don't believe that an ice age ever occurred?
Once again, in the Bible, the ice age is meant to have never happened. The Earth is not millions of years old. It is approximately 5,000 to 6,000 years old. And according to the Bible as well, dinosaurs did exist thousands of years ago.
Right. Okay. So moving on. In that same Bible, though, it did talk about Reagan, which is very interesting nonetheless. That is a conversation for another time, and we won't get into that. So let's talk about the next question. Incumbent President Lever had nominated you to the Supreme Court as a Republican pick. This is before he knew about your climate change stance, which he did not disclose when he asked you. Aside from you being nominated as Supreme Court Justice, you were essentially the third Republican to be nominated to the Supreme Court by the incumbent president. What is your stance on this, and what do you believe that means for the court and for the president himself?
Okay, so I'm not quite understanding the question. So you're asking what my stance on being nominated is, or I'm not, or my stance on being the third Republican nominated by current president?
The second part of it. That's the question. The first part was just me giving you information on why I asked the question that I did.
Right. Okay. So I'm honored to be chosen and nominated as a justice to the Supreme Court. I think that I will make a very good addition to the court, and I think I can help choose the right side on cases when it's necessary.
If the Republican president nomination, Louis Amaya wins the White House, what will that mean for your planned presidential run in 2032?
I have decided against running for president for quite a few years, with me being now on the Supreme Court. I think that it's more necessary to be on the court than doing a presidential run that is most likely going to result in failure, especially if Louis Amaya wins the 2028 presidential election.
Okay, so what you're saying is you will never run for president with any election? Like you will just won't run ever?
That's not what I said.
Because
for the foreseeable future, for the next 4 maybe elections, or 5 even, I would like to stay on the Supreme Court until I see fit to have any political aspirations.
Okay.
Right. So if you decide to leave the server or the Discord group, or if something happens in regard to you, you automatically forfeit your seat to the Supreme Court. Do you see that as a high risk to do, especially considering that, as a Supreme Court justice, that you plan to stay on there for a long term? What if there is a president from now until the future where they adopt a measure to provide term limit to Supreme Court justices? In your case, you will be term limited. What would you do in that aspect?
If I were term limited as a Supreme Court justice, I would try my hardest once again to keep my chairman position, and I would attempt to run for a political office if I was available.
Thank you for the interview. We really greatly appreciate you being here with us on TNN, and we really hope to have you back on again.
Well, I appreciate the interview, and I'd like to come back on at some point in the future if available. And yeah, that was
maybe even a debate.
A debate, possibly, yeah.